Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Andrew Donovan. Around here, he's known as the mayor of Syracuse, now former. But New York State is getting to know Ben Walsh as the director of the State Canal Corporation. Joining us now is Ben Walsh. Mayor, director, Mr. Walsh, welcome back.
They all apply. Great to be back with you, Andrew.
It's good to have you. How is the new gig going?
It is a lot of fun. I'm thrilled to be able to continue to be in public service, but it's a completely different subject matter, one that we learn a little bit about in 4th grade and 8th grade and then often don't think much about. But the canal system is incredibly complex. It's obviously historic. We're now in our 3rd century of operation. So I'm learning a lot and I'm having a lot of fun.
So comparing jobs, obviously as the mayor of Syracuse, you oversaw many more employees, but they were all like, I don't know, a 10-minute drive away from City Hall at most. Now you have fewer employees, but you need a car for several hours to get to some of the locations. So, what's a day in the office or out of the office like for you?
Yeah, it's different. But one of the things that I loved about being mayor that I have the opportunity to do in this job is to move around, to not be stuck in the office all day. I spent all winter visiting locks throughout the system. We do what are called lock pump outs, where we take the water out of the locks and we maintain the infrastructure. Again, very old infrastructure. We have an office in Albany, an office in Buffalo, and then we're part of the New York Power Authority, so they're based in White Plains. So more time on the road for sure, but everything's pretty much a day trip away, so I'm still able to get home usually for dinner and spending time with the family, which is important.
How do you think the governor envisions you in this role? Obviously, she chose you.
Yeah.
You worked together a lot when you were mayor. But what's her vision for the canal system, and why do you think you're the man to execute it?
Well, that's one of the reasons I was so excited to take the job, because Governor Hochul is a true believer in the canal system. She's what we would call a canaler. She and her husband regularly boat on the canal. She appreciates the history, but she's equally focused on the future and how we continue to make this amazing asset relevant in, again, our 3rd century of operation. So she's very familiar with it. And I think in me, she saw someone who is an executive leader. And while the job is different, as you mentioned, I oversee a staff of over 500 people. It's maintaining old infrastructure, which I also know a little something about. So yeah, I think it's a good fit. And again, it's really great to have the governor fully behind canals.
As somewhat of a self-touted student of history still, I'm excited for you to have this job because it gives me and this community an opportunity to learn more about the canal system. We all know the Erie Canal, the historic portion of the Erie Canal, and as America celebrates 250 years, you can't undersell how influential the Erie Canal was to American history. But beyond the old Erie Canal and then the more modern barge canal, what is the canal system?
Yeah, it's a great question, and frankly, I didn't fully understand it until I took the position. But with the Erie Canal, you have, of course, the original Erie Canal, Clinton's Ditch, as it was known. Then you had an enlarged canal, where they basically made the ditch bigger. And then you have the modern-day barge canal, where they took a lot of existing waterways, like the Mohawk River, and canalized them to create a bigger system that could accommodate bigger boats and more traffic. But it's not just the Erie Canal. You have the Champlain Canal, you have the Cayuga-Seneca Canal, and you have the Oswego Canal. So it's actually 4 canals that make up the system, 524 miles of waterway. It's a lot, covers a lot of ground. We have 57 locks. We have over 100 dams. We have 13 movable dams, which are those bridge-looking like structures that lower down into the Mohawk River. So again, it's a lot of infrastructure, and it's more than just the Erie Canal.
I was in Oswego County earlier this week, and I knew you were coming to see us. And even as I'm looking out the window to the Oswego River / Oswego Canal, I'm seeing your lock system, and I'm like, oh wow, Ben Walsh is, his system is in charge of all of this. It really is vast.
Yeah. So again, we have locks that go all the way up through Oswego into the Port of Oswego, and it covers a lot of ground, but it's one of those things where, again, unless you're a user of the canal, and this is one of my goals, is most people just don't know about it. But when you look at how proximate it is to so many communities, there are over 200 canal communities. If you're not a boater, you still have the trail system, the Canalway Trail, which is part of the Empire State Trail. So if you're a runner, a biker, there's a lot of ways in which you can use the canal system, and accessibility, making it accessible to more people is a top priority.
Your team has told me that you've explored it end to end already.
I have. So one of my first goals was navigation season started on Friday, May 15th. I started the job on February 2nd, I believe, and my goal was to visit all 8 sections of the canal system prior to the beginning of navigation season. I accomplished that goal, and I was out there on Friday the 15th in Waterford, New York, which is where Lock E2 or Erie Canal 2 is located, and that's really the gateway. And so boats line up, most of them coming from down south. They're known as loopers, who go down south for the winter and then loop back up for the warm season, navigation season, and they were all lined up, and our lock operator let me operate the lock. We opened it up and let everybody through. So yeah, that was fun.
Any surprises in the new job?
Boy, I would say not necessarily surprises, but it is a significant challenge managing this system. Again, parts of it 200 years old. We have billions of dollars of capital needs. We have about $100 million annual capital budget. So you do the math, and it doesn't really pencil out. So I feel a great sense of responsibility to try to draw in more resources. The New York Power Authority, again, we are a subsidiary of NYPA. They are a great partner. They are investing significant resources. Governor Hochul, as I mentioned, within the past few budgets has included $50 million in funds. We need every bit of those funds, and we need more. But you know, I think the way we attract more is by being good stewards of those funds. And again, we're making significant investments. You
mentioned the relationship with NYPA. How did the Canal Corporation end up in that portfolio?
Depends on who you ask, Andrew. It's an interesting history. So you know, the canal is older than a lot of other state, departments and entities. So it came up and essentially was part of the State Department of Transportation. It was shifted then to the Thruway Authority, I think in the early 90s, when the Thruway Authority had resources. Thruway Authority doesn't have nearly as many resources now, and so they looked to make the change back in 2017 and looked at NYPA. And while it may not be intuitive when you first think about it, in addition to having resources, importantly, NYPA manages a lot of hydro facilities. So when you look at the skill sets, engineering, hydrology, those are things that NYPA has in spades. And it's been, again, as with any transition, I think that all parties would admit some growing pains, but the NYPA board and leadership has really embraced canals, and I think we at Canals are embracing our role within the NYPA family, and so it's actually worked out really well.
All right, we'll take our first break. More with the former mayor of Syracuse, now the director of the Canal Corporation, when Newsmakers continues. Newsmakers is back, and so is a familiar face. Ben Walsh, the former mayor of Syracuse, now transitioned to his new role as the director of the State Canal Corporation. Director Walsh is our guest here. It's been an interesting weather season, and I wonder how. Well, first of all, you transitioned from mayor on a really tough winter, so yeah. Your successor got to handle some of the rougher snowfalls for the city.
I don't miss that.
I bet you don't. But in terms of some of the water levels, you've had a very busy season trying to manage the system, and I'm sure getting a lot of questions. Would you just brief us on kind of the season you went through, the levels, some of the flooding that we've seen in parts of Onondaga County? Yeah, so it really was a perfect storm this spring. We had a lot of snow over the winter, so you have the snow melt combined with a very rainy spring. And so we had high water levels virtually throughout the system. Fast forward to now, most of that has subsided with the exception of along the Cayuga-Seneca Canal or the Seneca River. So the Finger Lakes, in particular Seneca Lake, is still dealing with high levels. Cross Lake, which is where a lot of it ultimately ends up, are dealing with high levels. So it's really challenging. And what is also challenging is we control some of those water control mechanisms for those different bodies of water, but not all of them. So Oneida Lake, we own the Codnoy Dam. We control the water levels at Oneida Lake. Cayuga Lake, we have Lock CS1 right at the mouth of Cayuga Lake, and we control that. Seneca Lake is controlled by a private hydro facility operator, and so we don't control that. So that's one of the challenges of managing the system. You have different authorities controlling the water, and we work very hard to coordinate that, but there's room for improvement. I give the example, I worked obviously for the city of Syracuse for many years, including as mayor, and I never got a call from anybody from Canals or otherwise saying, hey, can you
let off on letting water out of Skaneateles Lake because we're dealing with flooding in the Oswego River Basin. So we are really focused on coordinating as much as we can so we can mitigate those impacts, but Mother Nature is more powerful than all of us.
And we constantly, on years like this, hear from people who live on Cross Lake and deal with flooding of their own property. And I just wonder, what would you say to them in terms of what you can and can't do to help them?
Yeah, so we're taking a number of steps. Probably the most significant is that we are doing modeling to look at essentially what we call numeric modeling. So we can determine if we adjust flow out of Codnoy and Oneida, how might it impact downstream, again, how might certain amounts coming out of Seneca or Cayuga. You use that modeling to inform your decision making. We have pretty good numeric modeling for the Mohawk River Basin. We don't for the Oswego River Basin. So that work is going to be done over the course of the next year. And we're going to use that information to inform all of our operations. So at a minimum, we're going to have better data to use to inform our collective decisions. I think we need to continue to look at how we are coordinating across the system and across different levels of government to make sure that we do right by everyone that lives along the system.
I can't even imagine the level of expertise that it must take in your department to know all this and understand it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really enjoying the job, because I'm anxious to understand as much of it as I can, and a lot of it is rooted in engineering, rooted in hydrology. And it is a science, and I'm learning it, but I'm really lucky. We have an incredible team, again, from the engineers and hydrologists to the workers that are on the ground maintaining the canal in warm and cold weather. And
you've been enlightened by these people, and you're also realizing that they won't be around forever. So you are focused on continuity of operations and recruitment and retention, to make sure that that expertise stays within the department, even if people move on.
Yeah, workforce attraction and retention is critical, as it is for any employer. But what's unique about canals is the work that's done day to day on canals, again, whether it's winter work, lock pump outs, or during the navigation season, there's nowhere you can go to learn that. There's no college curriculum for canal work. The term I've been using is canal craft, because it truly is a craft, and some of it is rooted in engineering and practices that were around 200 years ago, and then other things that we're doing are as innovative as any other place, using drones and robotics and all sorts of other technology. So this concept of canal craft is one that we're really trying to build, because our team has a lot of expertise and a lot of pride in it, but we also want to make sure that, again, those skills are transferred on to the younger workforce, so we can be around for another century.
The Erie Canal is just coming off its 200th anniversary celebration, so 200 plus years, headed for 300. How much of your work is balancing the history of the old stuff and working to modernize and preserve the old stuff, but keep the system modern?
Yeah, I appreciate the history. I respect the history, and there are a lot of people that are passionate about the history. That said, I think just based on what my own interests are, but also on my goals and objectives, I'm really looking towards the future. We need to make sure that the canal system is relevant in this third century. It's acknowledging that, we certainly don't do anywhere near the amount of commercial shipping that we used to, although there are opportunities, and I've had a number of conversations even within the past week about commercial shipping opportunities. But increasingly, we're looking at the system almost as a linear park. And I think this gets back to the question of where does it belong in state government. For a while, I think it was looked at as a liability, just something that lost money. We don't look at our parks like that, right? Those are assets, those are amenities. And so this linear park canal system is an asset and an amenity to the 200 plus communities that are around it. So it's shifting that thought in terms of how it's perceived, but also shifting how we operate and looking at different projects. Okay, we may need to go in and make certain repairs at a lock. We also have to acknowledge that lock is essentially like a park. People go there, they picnic, they fish, and so what amenities might be missing from there? So it really is, for me, about the future, maintaining our relevancy and being on the cutting edge of some of the work that we're doing.
All right, we'll take another break. When we return with the former mayor of Syracuse, we'll talk about his legacy as mayor. That's when Newsmakers continues. Newsmakers is back. Ben Walsh is here as the director of the State Canal Corporation, but we also want to talk about his time as mayor of Syracuse. He's out with a book called Vision of a Growing City, the Ben Walsh Years. It's a retrospective look at his 8 years in Syracuse City Hall. Former Mayor Walsh, this is your first time really releasing this.
It is, yeah. So, of course, I finished up in December, but even before then, I was thinking I wanted to make sure that I had some way to document all of the accomplishments that we achieved over the past 8 years. I'm incredibly proud of them, but not just for me, for our team, many of whom are still in City Hall. I think the work that we do on a day-to-day basis is often overlooked, but certainly don't want it to be forgotten. So this is not it is not a book by traditional standards, but it's basically a look back. Again, highlights some of our major accomplishments, and I hope for future generations, both serves as a good historical document, but also hopefully as a roadmap to how to be effective in leading city government.
Now that you're pushing 6 months removed from the job, is there anything, how are you reflecting differently than the days right after?
Yeah, I loved that job. I loved it. There was not a minute that I was in it where I wished I wasn't. But I don't wish to go back. I feel like I did my time and I did my best, and now it's a new chapter. But my heart will always be in the city. We still live in the city. My girls are still in the city school district. Many of my colleagues that I worked with at City Hall are still there in city government, including, of course, Mayor Owens. And I keep in touch with them and give them words of encouragement. But it was a great ride. But again, I'm happy to move on to the next chapter. But I wanted to make sure that I and others had something to look back on and to be proud of.
Has anyone around town approached you thinking you're still the mayor?
I have gotten a little bit of that,
okay.
And so they'll say mayor, and I'll say used to be, and but again, it's one of those titles that I still run into Mayor Minor, Mayor Driscoll, Mayor Young, and they'll always be mayor. And for those that want to call me mayor, I'll always respond to it.
Towards the end of last year, we talked a lot about your legacy as mayor, but when you put this book together, is there something that stands out as particularly memorable?
I think the things that I ran on are things that I'm still proud of. Bringing people together, getting things done, and not just accepting things the way they are because that's how we've always done them. I mean, that's really how we start the book. We talk about, it started with sledding and how crazy it was that we had this law that you couldn't sled on city property, and I was willing to challenge that assertion, and I did that throughout my time, and I'm really proud of that.
There's still trash cans?
And I love our trash cans.
Carts, sorry.
Yeah,
they're not
way.
cans anymore. Well, this is the book, and we will post it to localsyr.com for people to be able to look at the full version. Going through your years, because it is a pretty extensive timeline, was there something that you forgot about, a milestone that jumped out like, wow, we did that?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, so I think the good news was each year for the State of the City, we took the opportunity to kind of collect all of our accomplishments. And so we had those to lean back on. But 8 years, as much as it went by in a flash, is a long time, and you do forget about things. So it was kind of a fun, cathartic experience going through it. I had help from a few folks from my team, namely Greg Lowe, who has been with me every step of the way, and he did a great job with it. But yeah, it was fun to look back and remember some things, and also look back on some things and be glad I was done with them. But again, overall, I could, I'm my own biggest critic. I could nitpick little things here and there, but I'm really proud of our work. And again, it's our work. It's a team, my team at City Hall and our community. We should all be proud of ourselves.
What's it like to watch the city function without you?
I don't watch many. It's still a little weird. I watched Mayor Owens' State of the City. I think she's doing great, by the way. But I've tried really hard to just kind of distance myself, both for the benefit of Mayor Owens and her team, but also for myself. It's just, it's a big transition in life. But part of this transition is making sure that I'm investing my time and energy where it needs to be. Of course, that's at canals, but it's also at home, and that's been a priority. So yeah, I don't watch council meetings, I don't catch much, but what I do catch, again, I like what I see out of the mayor and her team.
Speaking of your family, how's everyone doing with more dad time?
They're great. I double checked with my wife Lindsay last night. I said, before I keep saying it, we do agree this has been a good move for the family, right? And she said, absolutely, it has. Even though I'm traveling more, they're all day trips. I'm home for dinner. I'm home at night. I'm driving my girls everywhere, all across the city, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, and I'm sure your girls get a kick out of seeing you in that canal gear, that hard hat and all that.
Yeah,
so.
I think they think I'm a bit of a phony, but as I said to you earlier, it's about safety, and I got to practice what I preach.
Wow, we get to see footage of you back that was 8 years ago, the night you were first elected. So when your girls were very tiny, still being lifted by their mom.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll take another break and have a final word with Ben Walsh after this. We have a final moment with Ben Walsh of the Canal Corporation. Summer is upon us. You just opened the system for navigation. What's your pitch to people who might be looking to experience the canal system for the first time this summer?
Yeah, get started. There's any variety of ways you can do it. Again, whether you're a boater, a biker, a jogger, just get down to the canal, give it a try. But we also have a lot of events that bring people in. We have a really cool significant art exhibit coming up called the Medina Triennial just out west in Medina. We have the Albany Symphony that's going to be doing free shows in 3 different locations from east to west. We have the Seneca Chief, the historic boat that traveled from Buffalo down to New York City last year for the bicentennial, that's coming back to Buffalo and is going to be stopping throughout the system, including right in the Inner Harbor in Syracuse. Lots of events. Get on our website, check them out, and we'll see you on the canal.
Well, it's great to have you back. I didn't know we'd see you this quickly. It's been almost 6 months, but it's good to have you back.
Thanks.
Congratulations on your continued service to New York State. And remember, the book is out now. I don't think it costs any money, does it?
It does not.
No, it will be posted on localsyr.com if you'd like to take a look at Mayor Walsh's legacy in the city of Syracuse as he continues his legacy in the Canal Corporation. That does it for Newsmakers. For all the hardworking people of News Channel 9, have a great weekend.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.